Alex, my friend, if you could select any song or poem to help inspire a historical figure, alive or deceased, during a downtime in their life, which poem or song would you select and why? Which historical figure would you choose to uplift and why? Please take your time, my friend. Whenever you are ready, the floor is yours, good sir.
And one of my favorite poets was Robert Frost. And one of my favorite poems is The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. And I would, I relate this poem to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. when he was in the Birmingham jail. You know, he was talking about civil rights and getting our government at that time to give everybody an equal opportunity, and that equal opportunity was to give us the right to vote. I'd like to read the poem and maybe break out a little bit of it.
Sure,
and,
sure.
Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. And I look at this poem and relay it to Dr. King's journey. You know, if he had not had, you know, the people and the support during that era to lift him up and help him move the platform forward, then who knows what the world would be like. You know, one of the other things that I have, you know, just another one of his speeches, you know, one of his quotes, and he was talking about civil rights and the laws. You know, he was quoting him. He said, the recent civil rights law would be meaningless unless it was translated into action by Negroes exercising their right to vote. One of the most important things that Dr. King stood for, equal rights and the right to vote. And we have to be aware and cognizant of that road that he took, taking that road, putting himself in harm's way, putting his family in harm's way, but sacrificing all of that for the will and the good of the masses.
Alex English's poems, not many were related to basketball, but both dealt with free agency and his feelings when he left Milwaukee in '78 and he signed as a free agent with Indiana. One was called It's Time to Go, and it reads, autumn's orange yellow and rust paints my mind with outdoor lust for freedom of movement about nature's room. But autumn's coming means I'll be leaving soon to continue my stroll with destination and add to memories this summer's vacation. It's a beautiful poem.
And my person would be Mahalia Jackson. Mahalia Jackson, I mean, this lady, she would be the inspiration. I'm speaking about from an experience that I actually lived it. And I was actually a freshman in college when Martin Luther King was assassinated. That was the time actually walking through this issue and experiencing what happened. The police driving through our neighborhood when I was a kid, escorting the Ku Klux Klan through, and they do fire bombs into our yard, and all of those things combined. And then suddenly, you know, my freshman year at Gardner Webb and entering college with white students for the first time in my life, you know, and I had never experienced anything except total separation. Martin Luther King was certainly an inspiration, and watching the things that happened to him and John Lewis, those images bring back memories, almost like, you know, it was a fantasy of something that did not happen, but actually witness it.
But one person that was really instrumental was my late wife, Isabelle Johnson Banks. She was a poet, writer, and she wrote a manuscript for about at least 30 poems. We haven't gotten the thing published yet, but that's one of the goals. Even after she passed away in 1997, which has been 28 years now, her poetry writing was unbelievable, and amazing. And my daughters, we all three of us, we have her manuscript. And one of the things I promised to do is to get that thing published. The one song that I would choose to talk would be for my friend Kirk Whalum. I know you guys know who Kirk Whalum is, and the song of it is called "God Must Have Spent a Little More Extra Time on Me." If you get a chance to listen to that today, it inspires me, and I've used that with even kids that like jazz. So the one guy that I would talk about would be a guy named Julian Francis Abele. Now, who is that? Julian Francis Abele was the guy that designed Cameron Indoor Stadium. He was the guy that designed the Duke Chapel. He was the guy that designed the steps and parts of the Art Museum in Philadelphia. And he was an African American. I guess they contacted him after they designed and built the Palestra, which was the top place that was, as far as stadiums were in the nation. And then they called him and their group, and they came down and they built Cameron Indoor Stadium, the famous Cameron Indoor Stadium, and also parts of Duke's West Campus. You know, I'm going to the chapel and all this stuff, and they did not promote it or talk about it until the last 10 years. So to read his story, it's amazing as an African American going through that time to be an architect and a designer and to get that position to be able to create and design something like. I would love to sit down and have that discussion of how he navigated through that. And he fought for a lot of things with civil rights and things of that. And he said, let my hands speak for me.
Mr. English, my friend, if you had one opportunity to say something to a deceased person that you disagreed with on something specific, what would you say and why to that person regarding the disagreement that you once had?
Well, I'll go back to my junior high school days, and I was in the 8th grade, and I had a coach, white coach by the name of Keith Crow. And that's where I got my basketball start. I was 6'1", long, lanky, kind of awkward, but he felt like I was not a good basketball player and thought that I would never be a good basketball player. So I sat on the bench, and I got to play 1 minute that whole year. I used the fuel of him telling me that I would probably never be a good basketball player. I used that as fuel and started working on my basketball game. I got to my high school the next year, and I started as a JV player. And at the end of the year, I got moved up to the varsity. And with the varsity, we went to the state championship twice. And I kept getting beat in the state championship by this team from upper state of South Carolina. They had a guy by the name of Clyde Mays. I mean, I could score on everybody else, but I couldn't score on him. He kept blocking my shot, and I would shoot it from here. And my principal at the high school, his name was Dr. Whittingham, and he always smoked a pipe. And he had seen the finals and saw that I had my shot blocked. And he said, "Son, I know what you need to do with smoking from his pipe." He said, "You need to change the arc of your shot." And I thought about that. I said, okay, how do I do that? So I started working on trying to change my shot. And my shot got better. I worked on trying to get fluent with it, get consistent with it, and got a scholarship to go play at the University of South Carolina. Him telling me that I, couldn't be a good basketball player was like putting stacks of logs on the fire, because I was determined that I was going to be a good basketball player. Got drafted by Milwaukee, made the team, beating out my old friend. And from then on, I kept getting better and better. But that's the one person that I look back on, and I want to thank him, because he was like one of those 3-hour burning logs that you keep putting them on and you just keep burning.
It would probably be my dad. My dad's. He used the terms. He said, "You're not worth using the words, the magical words," and he said those things more than a couple of times to me. When I was a young kid growing up and in the house with so many brothers. And I had two sisters too, but they was too young. And I was one of the older boys, and you weren't running around, and you no food. He watched me develop and move forward. And before, he was able to see his last grandson. There's some things, and I mean, there's always a number of people that you like to share some thoughts like that with, and tell them about the fact what they dared and said that you would not be able to accomplish.
The person's name is Clifford G. Clark, and he was my idol. He was my heart. Was my grandfather. And story about my grandfather, when we were going through certain things, we were living in South Philly before we moved to West Philly, and things were really hard. I mean, talk about certain things where when you came and you opened your refrigerator and what you had in there, maybe a thing of mayonnaise and some bread. So we were innovative and we made mayonnaise sandwiches. Okay.
Oh yeah.
He left for Mobile, Alabama. Him and his brothers, they had to leave from Mobile, Alabama because they got involved with a fight with a white man. And my grandfather just wasn't having it this one time, and they got into a fight. And by the time they got home, my great-grandmother and great-grandfather already had a brown paper bag with food in it and their clothes packed. And they put them on a train from Mobile, Alabama, all the way up to Uniontown, Pennsylvania. So they had to go up there to escape the possible lynching, or so to speak. And so he decided to take up an apprentice to go to West Virginia, which now in the school is called Fairmont University. But there was a thing where blacks could go there to a school, a little carpentry school, to learn to be a carpenter or masonry. And the thing that I'm saying about my grandfather, I went down in the basement when I stayed with him on weekends, and I looked through, he had these big old trunks, and I opened the trunk up, and there was they wore wool jerseys, them wool itchy jerseys they had back in the day in the sun. And it was the number, pulled out, it was number 20. And we talked about it, but ever since that day when I saw that, I had to been I probably was in 7th grade, 7th, 8th grade. From that day forth, I took that number 20. When I made my decision to go to Duke, I go down and I talked to him, and I was sharing it with him and telling him, and he said to me, he said, if you leave from here, he's older now, he said, I will probably die. And that hurt. I didn't take it serious. I said, oh, Grandma, nothing will happen to you. You are strong. But he said, I'll probably die from here. Never thought about it, but he never got a chance to really see me achieve what I did at Duke. That would be the one person I would love to come back and talk, because he knows all the history. I'm still trying to gather more of our history, of our past. And I'm getting bits and pieces here and there, but he's the one person, Clifford G. Clark, who I admire so much.
I asked the question, did this kind of exceed expectations for you, I hope?
It did. Absolutely, it did.
I'm happy.
Now all I need to do is win that trip to Greece.
Yes, sir. That's all that's left, my friend.